Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head.
This is the 35mm T1.2 from Siray's new Nightwalker set, which comes in the 24 and 55mm, both at T1.2. Now these lenses are called the Nightwalker set because they're T1.2s and are meant for low light situations, and they do a pretty good job at that. Now for context, these are APS-C lenses, so the 35 is actually equivalent to a 49mm, and the 24mm is equivalent to a 34mm on full frame, and then the 55mm is equivalent to a 77mm on full frame. Siray did not send me this lens. I bought this myself. I actually backed it on Indiegogo because I was just pretty curious about these, and they looked pretty neat, and I liked the metal gray versions. These also come in black. But I did buy the 35mm because my favorite full frame focal length is 35, and I probably should have got the 24, but I thought I'd get something in the middle ground to try out. One of the cool things about the Nightwalker set too is that they are all identical in thread size, weight, and length. So they all are 83.7 millimeters tall or long, I guess depends how the lens is oriented when you look at it. These lenses come in E mount, X mount, RF mount, and micro four thirds. I think that's all of them. The thread size on all of the lenses across the board are 67 millimeters, and all these lenses weigh about 500 grams. So ergonomically, these lenses at first feel kind of cheap. They have a hefty weight to them, like I said, 500 grams, so they do feel like quality in your hands when you're holding them. But I have held cheaper lenses than this, so they don't feel awful. It feels durable. The focus ring is a 270-degree throw, which feels nice. It's really smooth, maybe too loose for some. I think it's been okay, especially with the follow focus, which I do recommend a follow focus with this, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. Now the T-stop ring is stepless, which is really nice, but this step-up ring, and I don't know if it's just this model, I don't have the set, like I said, I only have the 35 here, is really loose, and too loose to where I don't like it. It's super smooth, but if you're ever trying to use this without a follow focus and just focusing with your hand, it's really easy to tap that T-stop ring and bump up and change your exposure. And I did that a lot trying to pull focus with my hand. So I recommend using a follow focused, and be aware of that if you get these lenses. That is probably my biggest problem with this whole set, is that it's really loose and real easy to bump by accident, and probably good to check your T-stop before hitting record when you are using these. Now, the most important thing about these lenses is the image. Now, all the footage you've seen here is shot on my A7 IV and S-Log 3. Since it is an APS-C lens, my other camera is a Sony FX6, which, if you know, I can't shoot in Super 35 mode without going down to 1080p, which is one of the downfalls to the FX6. But you can use clear image zoom and put this 35mm on something like an FX6 and just crop in on the image. And supposedly there's no image loss there, but I do think that gives you a different focal length in the end. I think it just gives you the 35 APS-C version. I think it's identical. I haven't done the scientific measurements on that, but I think it is probably closer to the 49mm when you crop in, and it's probably identical to the Super 35 in 1080p. Now these lenses have been giving me a super pleasing image that I've liked. It's a very neutral image. I wouldn't say there's a lot of character in these lenses, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on what you're looking for. But I think they're a very good middle ground lens where I don't see a lot of color shifting in any direction. They seem pretty neutral for any kind of style. And another thing too that is probably my favorite thing I noticed about this lens is wide open at T1.2. This lens is pretty sharp. Almost every shot you've seen in this video so far has been shot at T1.2 and maybe T2. But I usually try to keep these wide open because I really was curious about seeing how this does at a T1.2 on an APS-C. And that's what piqued my curiosity when I bought this lens. And just in case you're curious, I will put up some examples of a sharpness test I did real quick. And this isn't scientific, but I just went through a couple of the T-stops, and if you're curious to see how T1.2 looks wide open compared to the rest of the T-stops, here you go. Now, if I was really being nitpicky, and like I said, this isn't scientific, now T1.2 honestly is sharp enough for me. A little hard to hit focus if you're freehanding it, but once you hit about T2, that's when I think it does get a tad bit sharper, but not significant, and that's super impressive to me. And then T2.8, and then T4, I think from there on forward, it kind of looked the same to me, but that's just my eyes. I'm not going to say that's scientific. I'm going to say that's opinion. You've seen the shots. You tell me. What do you guys think? Does T1.2 look sharp enough for you compared to the rest of the lenses T-stops? I'm curious if anyone is using this lens. Let me know what you think. But that is one of the things I am actually pretty impressed by, is the sharpness wide open on this lens. Overall, I think this lens is a nice look that was pretty neutral to fit a lot of different types of productions. And I also seen, I have not tried this yet, Sirui. I can never get this right. Sorry, Sirui. So Sirui is also coming out with an anamorphic adapter that'll fit these lenses that I'm pretty curious about. I don't own these. I haven't seen anything on them. I just seen them real quick before I actually started recording. I didn't know that was a thing, and I think those would pair pretty awesome with these lenses. So overall, for the price of these lenses, which as of right now recording this video, you can get the entire set for $1,000, $999 right now, and that'll get you the 24, 35, and 55 in the black. The metal gray is a little bit more, and I think it is $1,100 for the set, and then that's $349 a piece if you buy them as individuals, and the metal gray will run you around $399. But with that said, these lenses are amazing, especially if you can pick up the set at that price and have that kind of focal length coverage, and all these Cine lenses are geared out and identical in size, so when you're swapping out your matte boxes, you're swapping out on set. It's going to make it really simple for you to not have to change up your whole rig. There's a lot of reasons why you want the lenses to be the same, or if you put them on a gimbal, they weigh all the same. You don't have to really recalibrate anything. It's going to save you time. I don't think you can beat these. Really, the only big complaint I have is that loose T-stop, but other than that, I would love to have these in full frame for sure, but I think the Sirui Nightwalker series is going to be a good buy, and I think you're going to be happy with them, especially if you were just wanting to have your own set of Cine lenses just to own for maybe your smaller clients, and then rent out your higher end lenses for bigger budget productions. That's what I do. I own a Cine set for my FX6, and I rent out anything else that I need that is going to cost more and more expensive. But I do think if you're going to own lenses, you probably want something that's not super characteristic. So something a little neutral that can kind of swing both ways, where the flaring on these isn't really artistic. I honestly didn't like the flaring. I don't think the flares on this. Now, this is something that's super personal and preference. It's opinion. Some people love flares. Some people hate flares. I like flares, but I'm picky about my flares. So did not like the flares in these. They don't flare that much. So if that's probably a pro for you, that's awesome. If it's a con, yeah, maybe go with something a little more like the Essilor Magics or something. But these are going to be a solid buy, and especially at that price again, I think you won't regret having the whole set around. So that's it for this one. Let me know what you guys think of the Nightwalker series lenses from Sirui. I hope I'm saying that right. Well, I hope you guys got something out of that. I will see you guys in the next one.